of hearing of the appeal of termination for Ms. Leah Morris-Towle for discussion, consideration, and possible action. Pursuant to IRS 38-43103, the board may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public, for discussion and consultation for legal advice with the board attorneys as it relates to this agenda. Before we go into executive session, or if we do go into executive session, Leah Morris-Towle has asked to address the board on this topic, and Ms. Towle, I'd like to call you forward at this time.
Thank you again for letting me speak regarding this topic. If I get out of line in some of the comments that I'm going to make regarding the investigation, please stop me if they need to be heard in the executive session.
Well, Ms. Towle,
it's Towle.
Towle. I'm sorry. You have a right to privacy, so anything you discuss, we're probably not going to be discussing. I don't think we get the specifics of your case. It's more on the policy of how we move forward.
Okay. So. First, I would like to let the board know that, which I did state in the letter that I resent to the board June 13th, that my employment as of June 13th had not yet been officially terminated in the state's HRIS system. I was terminated as an Asdb employee on April 8th, 2013. So 2+ months later, I have still not been officially terminated, unless that's changed in the last week, in the state's HRIS system. I have yet to receive any information on COBRA. That's a violation of federal law. I believe that the Asdb's administrative leave policy needs to be readdressed by an independent party outside of Asdb. I was on administrative leave for 11 months. I will repeat, 11 months. The state's policy only allows 80 hours for an employee to be on administrative leave. They expect the agency to do the investigation in a 2-week time period to justify whether that employee should be terminated for cause. Asdb's policy is open-ended. You can be on administrative leave for as long as the superintendent intends you to be. Or in my case, I don't know why it took them 11 months to investigate the charges against me. When I was put on administrative leave, my staff was told that I was on an extended leave of absence. Why they were told that, I don't know. But because I am not allowed to speak with any Asdb employees during my administrative leave period, I was receiving calls from my staff because they were concerned that I was extremely ill. So there's some variation as to what is being told staff after one is put on administrative leave. I don't know if they're trying to keep the facts confidential, but it is causing problems when you're not allowed to speak to staff and they're making contact with you. Also, in regulation GCQFRD, I only had 3 days to respond to the letter of intent to terminate me. Asdb had 11 months to investigate me, but I had 3 days to respond to the charges. At that point, that was the first time that I had received notice of all the charges against me. I've spent 11 months not knowing what I've been charged with. I had an indication, but I didn't know what the final charges were until I was notified on February 12th, 2013. I still have yet to find out what the original charge was against me. It was done in a formal complaint. I have yet to find out what the original charge was made against me. I do know that during the investigative period, additional charges were added to my, to the allegations. I had made a request to clean up my office on July 11th. It was at that time the HR director came to meet me while I was cleaning out the office. She attempted to deliver my intent to terminate letter at July 11th. I then informed her that they were violating my due process rights at that point, and she withdrew the intent to terminate letter at that time. I had requested on May 22nd, when the investigator had interviewed me, how to file a formal counter-complaint. I never received a response. I tried 3 attempts to try and get the agency to let me know how to file a formal counter-complaint because it is not in policy or regulation. I have still yet to know how to file a formal complaint, After this happened, July 23rd, the superintendent met with me with his witness, Terry Pritchard. Since I still didn't know how to file a counter-complaint, I put in summary the issues and the complaints that I had against 3 people, the HR director, Maria Murphy, Lauren Pierce, and Jessica Federico. I don't believe that it was by coincidence that the timing of my administrative leave was due to retaliation, because we were about to do a memo of concern against Jessica Federico, who currently at that point in time worked in the payroll office. I had stated prior to that many times with the HR director and with Robert Hill the concern I had between the relationship between Jessica Federico and her mother-in-law, Lauren Pierce. That if I started a memo of concern, it would cause problems. When we were about to deliver the memo of concern, that afternoon on May 4th, 2012, a formal complaint was filed against me from Jessica Federico that morning. I don't believe that's a coincidence. I'm wondering if the board is interested in knowing how much this cost the agency and the taxpayers for the 11 months that I was on administrative leave, because they had to pay me what I was making at the time that I was put on administrative leave, and I had a 15% detail. Would the board like to know how much it costs the state and the taxpayers? I also accrued vacation leave while on the 11 months I was on administrative leave, and they had to pay me that out at termination. This was a waste of taxpayer dollars. July 23rd, when I filed the counter-complaint, I never heard anything more regarding the counter-complaint that I filed against the 3 individuals. I was asked at one point if any of the 3 had been put on administrative leave during the investigation of the counter-complaint. They continued to still work there. They were never put on administrative leave. And this is where I want to ask, was my counter complaint ever investigated? The only thing that I noted in the counter complaint and that I knew happened was that Lauren Pierce was moved down to the end of the hall shortly after my counter complaint was filed. And I would like to know who investigated the counter complaint, especially when I named the HR director, Lauren Pierce, who are very tied together. They do consult with each other on investigations against employees, allegations. And my concern is who investigated the counter complaint, if in fact it was even investigated. In my response to the termination letter, I noted several individuals who consistently, during my time as payroll manager and in charge over finance, I never really knew what my title was. In the end, I had been given so much to do during finance, I don't even know what my title is. In my response, I noted several items that I was never given a performance eval since Robert Hale became superintendent, nor was I given a performance eval by the HR director, Maria Murphy. They were both my supervisors during a 3-year period. They never once gave me a performance eval. My last performance eval was given in May 2009. This was also mentioned during my investigator, during the interview with the investigator, when she was interviewing me about performance evals. So I find that to be a little hypocritical. I felt that my response to my letter of determination was ignored. They had already made their decision. I officially protested in an email the use of the system that the IT department used in searching my email, because most of the evidence that they charged me with was in my email. I keep everything. I'm known as the hoarder. If you needed something, I could find it years back. I've been with ASDB at that point for 21 years. When I met with the superintendent during that meeting that I had requested, they took me over to the information technology department to search for my email. There were several ways they could search the email. There were 2 individuals, director and an executive director, that consistently started employees prior to the superintendent's authorization. Consistently. To my knowledge, they were never disciplined, nor a memo of concern was ever done against them. And I also, to my knowledge, believe that this is continuing to happen. I was charged with starting an employee prior to the superintendent's approval. And I know that Nancy Amon was also charged with that. And yet the executive director and the director herself, who consistently start new employees and other multiple assignments, their contracts were renewed. When we were searching my emails, we could search for names that I had sent to. We could search the subject line. We could search in the body of the text. I was very consistent whenever I sent an email out to directors, their supervisors, the superintendent, the HR department, when somebody was started without the superintendent's authority. not one of them came up in a 3-year period when we looked. Not one. And searching all the criteria that they gave me for those emails. I would like to know where those emails went. Not one came up. When I looked up the individuals that I just spoke of that consistently start in staff prior to the superintendent's approval, all that came up was budget-related information. Supervisors and directors know me for what they call my nastygrams, and they do not want to receive nastygrams from me. Witnesses can be called that can verify those facts. That they did, in fact, do exist, but not one came up in the search for my email, the evidence that I was saying in my response of intent to terminate. I couldn't prove that I had ever sent one in a 3-year period as payroll manager. Documents or logs were never provided to me to show falsification of my own attendance. This was a new allegation that was added to the final letter of intent to terminate. When I met with the superintendent on July 23rd, he stated that I was being charged with falsification of my employees' attendance, and as supervisor, I was responsible for their attendance. I asked, is my attendance being questioned? He reassured me, no, it is not. It was added to the final letter of intent to terminate. Whenever the superintendent or the HR director was out of the office, I was third in line to approve PBAs. I'm also an approver for out-of-state travel and in-state travel. And yet I'm accused of starting an employee prior to the superintendent's authorization. They were not on campus at the time that occurred. I requested VPN logs, which is when you log in from home, on whether to prove I was at the office or whether I was at home. I have also requested PBA logs, which will show the individuals that I just spoke of starting new employees. I have not been given anything. Witnesses can also testify to the effect of the presence of the superintendent and Leah Murphy at the times in question on whether or not they were on campus, and so can attendance records and by pulling their calendars. During my 21 years at Asdb, I've served in many capacities. It was during this time that I was working a minimum of 60 to 70 hours a week. Witnesses can be called to testify to that fact that they saw me in my office late at night and on the weekends. Security guards continued to watch out for me because of the neighborhood in which it was located in, because I was there until 9, 10 o'clock at night. And then I'd have to go home and continue to work to get what was needed done. And yet I'm being charged with falsification of my own attendance. Lastly, I want to clarify something that Vern Jones sent to the board on his last letter to you in support of Robert Hill. I think it's a known fact, because it was printed in the newspaper, that I was the one responsible for turning in the superintendent and the school to the general accounting office for his out-of-state travel. However, what you need to understand is This information was given to the General Accounting Office, Internal Audit Division in September of 2011 by another employee, not by myself. I had no idea this employee had sent up this information. The plan was already in place to investigate his out-of-state travel at that time. I received an email from an internal auditor from the GAO asking me about his out-of-state travel. And I told them that I would get back to him after the Auditor General had completed our financial audit. I was never able to do so because I was put on administrative leave. I was not the one that initiated the investigation against Superintendent Robert Hill. That was started long before I was put on administrative leave. The only thing that I did was call the General Accounting Office and ask them if they still had the evidence in the box that she sent. Up to them, they said yes. I then asked them to continue the investigation. I would like that clarified because he stated in a letter to you that Robert Hill was being attacked by 2 individuals out of retaliation for being fired. This is not out of retaliation. This was out of my code of conduct, which I always held myself in when working for the school. I enjoyed what I did. I liked what I did. I enjoyed who I worked with, and I did a good job. But to say that I retaliated against him because I was fired is not correct. As a state employee and as a former finance manager, it was my duty to inform the state of that fact. And I just want that clarified.
And in the interest of time, because we've been here a few hours and you're having me through, I want to be gracious and
That's
allow
fine.
you all your time, but
Yeah.
if you can maybe wrap
Thank
up
you.
in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, I will. Thank you for letting me state my side of the facts. If you were presented with the entire documents that were given during the investigation, not just the superintendent's report, I believe you'll have questions yourself if you look at what they charged me with, my responses, and the investigator's responses. And I'm just respectfully requesting that my appeal be granted to be looked at again, my termination. Thank you.
Thank you.